Selamünaleyküm Ahmet. This is International Refugee Rights Association's Mülteci TV. We are sensitive about the crisis that may cause migration related to all oppressed geographies in the world. The Kashmir issue is also unfortunately one of them. We wanted to hear the problem from a Kashmiri, namely you. Could you give us a brief information about the background of the Kashmir issue, please?
So Kashmir issue is the case of the oldest case of prolonged occupation in the world. So right since 1947, for the past 75 years, we see that the people of Kashmir, the Muslims of Kashmir, have been struggling for their right to self-determination. It's important to remember that Kashmir is a Muslim majority territory. So you have more than 60% of population in Kashmir, state of Jammu and Kashmir are Muslims, but particularly in Kashmir Valley, you have more than 96.4% of the people are Muslims. So for the past more than 7 decades, these people have been struggling for their right to self-determination, a right that the Indian state has denied to these people. The United Nations had promised the Muslims of Kashmir in 1947 that they would be given a chance to determine their own fate, to determine their own destiny through a referendum, because the people of Kashmir did not want to be a part of the Indian Union or the Indian state. But for the past 7 decades, this right or this referendum, this plebiscite has not happened, and the people of Kashmir have been demanding this right to self-determination so that they can choose their own destiny. And against this struggle, the struggle for self-determination, we have seen that the Indian state has used unprecedented amount of violence against Kashmiris. They have jailed Kashmiris, they have murdered Kashmiris, they have raped Kashmiri women, used rape as a weapon of war against Kashmiri women. They have blinded Kashmiri children who used to take part in the protests for self-determination. They have denied Kashmiris the right to education, the right to movement. So all the rights have been violated, but the fundamental right, which is the right to self-determination, has been violated, and that is most important. So for the past 70 years, this is what the struggle has been about.
I understand. So what's happening there right now?
Right now, we are witnessing a very dangerous turn in the history of Kashmir. So violence was always there and persecution was always there. But what is happening right now is that the military occupation of Kashmir is transforming into settler colonialism, which is that the Indian state feels that the only way they can put an end to Kashmiri struggle for self-determination is by settling members of Hindu community in Kashmir. So they want to attack the demographic nature of Muslim majority of Kashmir. So they're trying to transform the Muslim majority territory of Jammu and Kashmir into a Hindu majority territory. And they feel that by changing Kashmiri Muslim community in Kashmir from a majority into minority, they will be able to put an end to their struggle for self-determination. Because the whole idea of referendum depends on this. If Muslims are no longer a majority in state of Jammu and Kashmir, then the Indian state does not mind doing a plebiscite and referendum. They are going to settle members of Indian army there and Hindu settlers there, and then even if a referendum happens afterwards, it will no longer be a beneficial referendum because Muslims are no longer a majority community there. So we are seeing an attack on the Muslim character, on the Muslim nature of the state of Jammu and Kashmir.
I understand. Do you think this persecution in Kashmir could cause a migration crisis in the long term?
To be very honest, it has already caused a migration crisis. Right at the beginning, it caused a migration crisis. So in 1947, we saw that more than 200,000 Muslims were expelled from the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and they migrated to Pakistan. They were forced to migrate to Pakistan because of the violence of the then Hindu ruler, which was the Dogra ruler, supported by the Hindu nationalist RSS, to which the current Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, belongs. So 200,000 Muslims were expelled from state of Jammu and Kashmir that time. Right now, you will find a huge amount of Kashmiri Muslim refugees in Pakistan, living in Azad Kashmir and other parts of Pakistan as well. And what is very important is that many Kashmiris who, because of the persecution, want to leave Kashmir are not being allowed to leave Kashmir. So this includes students as well. They have been denied the right to movement. They have not been given the travel documents necessary so that they could leave Kashmir. They are being denied passports because the Indian state wants them to live in Kashmir and face the persecution that it is inflicting upon them. Many of the students who are studying in Kashmir and want to move abroad for studies are not allowed to move abroad. And if they do move abroad, when they come back, they are subjected to a lot of harassment, a lot of questioning, because what the Indian state really fears is that when these Kashmiris will move out and there would be a strong Kashmiri diaspora, they are going to raise awareness about Kashmir, they are going to do lobbying about Kashmir, they are going to tell the world what the Indian state has been doing in Kashmir for the past 70 years. And this is why the Indian state has also many a times blocked the internet in Kashmir, because they fear that the Kashmiri voice would get out. So the migration crisis is not, when it comes to Kashmir, a thing about future or long term. We are seeing a migration crisis right now where many Kashmiri Muslims either are not able to migrate, and this is a violation of their right to movement, or those who have migrated are not being allowed to return, and this is the violation of their right to return. Their properties have been taken away after they moved out. Their families are harassed after they move out. Some of their siblings are detained after they move out so that they will be forced to come back. So we are seeing a current migration crisis in Kashmir.
If you would like to present a future perspective, what should we do as Muslims? I mean, what is the responsibility of the international community also?
International community and the Muslim community globally has to understand something very important, which is that the only solution to these problems in Kashmir, to human rights violations in Kashmir, to the war crimes in Kashmir, cannot emerge from India. It has to come from an international force, because many of the people in Kashmir who are, let's say, the political prisoners who are jailed, the Indian judiciary has no justice for them. Rather, it acts as a tool of military occupation. So it uses laws to keep Kashmiri political activists and political prisoners behind bars, laws like Public Safety Act, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, which the Amnesty International called a black law or a lawless law. So these laws are used by the Indian judiciary to, justify the Indian crimes against Kashmiris. And second thing, which is more important, is that, as I told you about the settler colonialism that is happening in Kashmir right now. So the Indian state is trying to transform the Muslim majority character of Kashmir into, to transform Muslims from a majority into a minority. And the international community has to realize, and the Muslim community in particular, because the victims are Muslims here, that if this thing happens where Kashmiri Muslims are no longer a majority in Kashmir, then the entire future would change. And Kashmiri Muslims and their struggle for right to self-determination will suffer a lot. So the time to act is now. And they have to understand that Kashmiri people are not looking towards the Indian state or the Indian judiciary for solutions. They are looking for solutions from outside of India. There has to be pressure from outside so that the Indian state puts an end to these violations.
I understand. I would like to thank you very much, Mr. Ahmed. I wish the whole international community, the whole international society, to hear about the struggle, suffering of the Muslims in Kashmir.
Inshallah, we all hope for a long-lasting solution for this problem of military occupation. Inshallah.